Let me point out in starting that before I came to the University of Michigan, I taught at the University of Toronto, and both of our children carry and use Canadian passports. I don't have much time. I don't have much time, and I have to make you love mining. So I'm going to use the hard sell. See if we can get a slide. There we go. I'll divide it into why mine, and then we'll say just a little bit about the role of mining in the St. Lawrence region. Now we're looking here at a Google Earth image of the area around Marquette. And it's difficult for you to see. That's about 4 miles right there. Here's Marquette. And down here is the Empire Tilden Iron Mine, one of the largest mines in the country. And if you look at it, and I can't see it very well, perhaps you can, it's an enormous scar on the surface of the earth. And you could well wonder, why on earth would we do something like this to the earth? And that's what many of my students say. And that's basically all they say, and they don't want to mine. You might see jobs there. What I want you to see is your responsibility to supply society and to keep up our standard of living. This is the skyline of Toronto. Look hard at that skyline. Everything in it, except the grass, the trees, and the water, had to be dug out of the ground, had to be mined. You see the saying, if it can't be grown, it has to be mined. Here's the QEW on a high-traffic day. Everything in that picture, except a few of the weeds along the center, had to be dug out of the ground. All right, so some of my students say, I'm going to ride a bike. Well, fine, but that bike is made out of steel, aluminum, titanium, and you name it. And some of them even say, I'm going to go off the grid. And they do it with a high-tech pack made out of all sorts of good metals, and they take their watch and they take their iPhone when they go. So we are absolutely inextricably in need of minerals. In the United States today, about 37,687 pounds of mined material has to come out of the ground every year for each citizen. That's an enormous amount. You don't have to read all the details there, but the point is we have to dig some really big holes just to keep society where it is. Now, you might say, as some of the students do, why don't we recycle? Why can't we just recycle and take care of it? Well, the problem is illustrated here for some elements that we do recycle. We're looking at aluminum, lead, copper, iron, and steel. And this is the period from 1970 to 2005, and we're looking at the amount of recycling. And you can see that for the three elements, copper, iron, and steel, and aluminum, recycling has stayed somewhere between 10 and 30% for the entire period of time and is not improving. There are a lot of reasons for that we can talk about later if you'd like to. We are doing a little bit better with lead, and that's because lead is principally in car batteries, and when you get a new one, you turn in your old one. And remember, you can't recycle oil, gas, coal, phosphate, potash, soda ash, salt, sand and gravel, you name it. So we have to mine. We absolutely have to mine. There's another reason we can't recycle. Let's just take a look at copper production. This is world copper production from 1900 to the present, from less than about 500,000 tons a year to almost 17 million tons a year now. I'm going to go now to a plot that starts in 1995 when copper consumption is increasing enormously, and let's just take a look at where that is happening. This is copper consumption now in some developed countries that do a lot of manufacturing, and in fact it's staying constant or decreasing slightly. And that's because we are recycling. We are using things as intelligently as possible. but let's add China and India. Pretty dramatic. China has gone from consumption of around 50,000 tons a year in 1995 to more than 500,000 tons a year today, and it continues to climb. India's increase percentage-wise is almost as strong. It just doesn't show as much because it's still working its way up. Well, you might say, as some of my students do, let them just mine it where they live. But it doesn't work that way because mineral deposits are where they are. They're very special freaks of nature, and you have to exploit them where they are located. Mineral trade is a global trade, and minerals are mined and produced and transported all over the world. This business of inconvenience of location is one that we run into repeatedly, and we'll come back to at the end of what I'm going to talk about. But here's a great example. This is the little town of Waihi, New Zealand, and you're looking there at the Martha mine, which is one of the largest gold mines in the world. It's a good producer, and it's right in the middle of town. They didn't vote for it to be there. They can't zone it away. It is there. They have found a way to produce it and worked for as sustainable a way to produce it as they can, but they don't have the choice. They have the choice of to produce it or not, but we'll come back to that choice in a minute. Okay, let's just take a look at the Great Lakes St. Lawrence region. In terms of economic impact, there's no getting around the fact that mineral production is a big issue. This is non-fuel mineral production, and these are the top 8 states in terms of value of mineral production, and you can see that Minnesota is number 3 and Michigan is number 8. I'd call your attention to the fact that Wisconsin is not on the list, and it's very, very far down the list. Ontario is number 1 in Canada, and Quebec currently is number 4, and those numbers are really big. So these are major contributors to the economies. Just a few maps to show you locations and to make a few points. This is a map showing the distribution of rare metal deposits in the region. On the left would be iron and steel, in the middle there copper, zinc, and nickel, and on the right gold. You can see that the iron deposits are principally up here around Lake Superior. The steel mills, some here, now some of these are historical, but some here, but mostly in the lower Great Lakes and out to St. Lawrence. But this is a very large concentration of steel making for the rest of North America. It is the principal region. We've got the copper mines in the western part of Lake Superior and across the Shield here in Quebec and Ontario, and then the gold mines too. Construction materials, chemical materials, salt, limestone and dolomite, gypsum, cement. The Michigan Basin, which centers here, it's a sedimentary basin, a great accumulation of sedimentary layers, has layers of salt as much as 4,000 feet thick underneath it. We mine that salt along the margins of it and along in this area where salt is also near the surface. Dow Chemical, which is located right there, why would the second largest chemical company in the country, in the United States, choose to locate in Midland? It's a great place, but you gotta wonder. It's because they can put down a drill hole, hit very salty water, and pump it up and get bromine, magnesium, and other compounds. Cement manufacture is a very big industry along the Great Lakes and out the St. Lawrence, and that is based in part on the limestone deposits, limestone and dolomite, which are also mined in very large operations, as some of you would be familiar with. And don't forget, even if you don't have a mine like this in your backyard, a lot of this stuff has to move around the countryside or around the Great Lakes. And in terms of tonnage, mineral products are the dominant tonnage moving on the Great Lakes. You can see here that iron ore, coal, and limestone make up by far the large majority. This little wedge contains salt, cement, and grain is the smallest wedge of all of them. My favorite example of that is here. This is the Walter J. McCarthy Jr., and it hauls low sulfur coal that is mined in Wyoming, and it comes by train to a terminal in Superior, Wisconsin, and then it goes to a power plant in St. Clair, Michigan. Well, even if you don't have any of this in your backyard, here's something that you do. That's sand and gravel operations. Sand and gravel operations are the backbone of construction in all municipalities. They're what makes the roads, what makes the foundations, what makes the houses, the sidewalks, you name it. The value of sand and gravel production in the states and provinces adjacent to the region we're talking about is $6.6 billion a year. Here's the distribution of values. And this map shows you the distribution of sand and gravel operations in the state of Michigan. I projected it onto this Google image from another file that doesn't have quite the same spatial coordinates. And so I have a few mines out here in the water that you'll just have to overlook. But you get the picture, don't you? Almost every municipality has at least one of these mines beside it, and many times they have many mines. So, a good example, I should say that once we talk about mines, I hope I've convinced you that we need them, that we need the materials that come from mines. But even when I convince people of that, there's still the not in my backyard syndrome. We have a problem with this collectively. And this is where I think that you, as local leaders, have a role to play. A good example of the issue of not in my backyard is provided by the Eagle Mine here in Michigan, which is on course to be a producer, and the Crandon deposit in Wisconsin, which is much larger, much richer, and has been known for almost 40 years and has not been brought to production. Now let me ask you a thought experiment. If your municipality is unwilling to produce what it has, does it have the right to minerals produced by another municipality? Do we have a moral responsibility to collectively resolve this need for minerals in an environmentally satisfactory way? And I'd like to think that if we can put a person on the moon, surely we can do that. Thank you very much.